Good morning, everybody. You got your Self Shift crew back for a cold Sunday morning podcast in February 2026. Got Patrick here, Doug,
Hey, I'm Doug.
Derek,
And hey, I'm Derek.
and we're off to a good start. Thank you both. All right. Today we've got an interesting subject that I think ties a lot of things that we've discussed, including gratitude that we talked about last week or the week before, into kind of a cohesive thing, right? And today we're talking about expectations, not goals, not standards, expectations, these quiet assumptions or contracts that we think are how life should unfold or what things should come to pass because we want it, we've invested in it, we've spent time in it, right? So we're going to hit on some personal examples today. And I'm going to repeat this, to give the crew some grounding or give the listener some grounding is that the three of us, as you can probably tell by looking at the screen there, have lived a bit of life. So we're coming at this from a perspective of three guys who have had very successful careers. And I don't say that to be egotistical, just to relate to we've lived this and have climbed corporate ladders and that type of thing, led organizations, raised families, and still, even for us, working with controlling expectations or being not realizing that you can't control outcomes is something that I think we would say that we've baked into all of our lives, right? As part of our kind of our mantra or our foundation for self-transformation and trying to live a value-based life. Doug, I know this is super close to you because I think this was actually your recommendation. So let's get your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I'll start with our typical kind of quote thing, which is one from Anonymous that is expectation is a resentment in the making. And I found that to be very true. I think when I saw this topic, by the way, Patrick maintains a list of topics and it's huge. But anyways, when I saw this in his list of topics, I was like, oh, that's one because I think in a couple different podcasts we talked a little bit about like we talked about gratitude and things like that. But one thing I've been trying to work on is being more content, my contentment. And part of contentment is also kind of managing expectations, I guess I would say. And something that I've noticed over time is I tend to get excited about future events and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to go see this comedian and we're going to have a great time. And I create this story around how great it's going to be. And then when we go, it's a good time, but I end up walking away with sort of a negative feeling about it, which is wrong. Like managing your expectation around, taking a big trip and thinking this is going to be, filled with countless memories, but, we make some good memories, but we don't make countless memories. And I walk away in this sort of view of things as negative. So, in terms of being content, in terms of appreciating your experiences and things like that, I guess it's important to manage your expectations. And, a big part of this is kind of the what if thing, but another part of it is kind of being careful not to have these high expectations that take away from how much you ultimately appreciate your experiences, if that made sense.
It does. Really good framing.
Yes.
Derek.
Yeah, I as I did a little bit of preparation for this talk today, I went out and went back to one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Wayne Dyer. He is a legend in spiritual teaching, thought leadership, and he has simple but profound wisdom around expect nothing and accept everything. And I think those like four words, creates the framework of like your life and how basically you find peace and how you actually on this journey and you live life and experiences through personal, professional, you come into that space where you discover peace is only found in letting go of your expectations of another or of an outcome or of a situation and coming into acceptance of it. And that gives you that freeing energy within you of allowing yourself to just be okay with whatever is in the moment. And I think that's very important around this topic of letting go of expectations and really training your mind to not think about the future and all these things, what if scenarios and would have, could have, should have, and all that kind of mindset will drag you down into that pit of negativity and hardship.
Yep. No, certainly. I think, bringing in, Doug had a really good quote. That Anonymous comes up with some really good quotes
Yeah,
sometimes.
I don't know who that
Not
guy
sure who
is.
that is, but they really crush it sometimes. Is that, a couple of things. One of the Buddha quotes: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, right? And I think this goes back to what we talked about when we talked about recognizing, accepting, and go. The psychological flexibility we talked about, in the sense that you recognize, you got to force be aware of what's happening. And then another one that I think ties into this, and then I'm going to drill on a personal example of that, is that we suffer more often in imagination than we do in reality, from Seneca, one of the Stoic philosophers. And, kind of bringing that into a lot of the neuroscience and evolutionary biology that we talked about, evolutionary neuroscience, and how, humans, or our brains are designed to keep us alive, not necessarily to keep us happy. So once I figured out that there was a scientific basis and this issue with attachment and outcomes, I was able to wrap my head around it a lot more, because I've been, chronically over time, not so much anymore since I've went through the self transformation and growth, is that just really banking on the outcome, or what the you expect to happen, because you've got it up here, right? Even recently, I've had to correct myself a couple of times. Been working with an organization, and this started last summer, and I was expecting this to really reach fruition maybe over the holidays, and this was based upon the information that I was providing, which one I was quite proud of, and the thought, well, how this is how long this should take, and probably also a little bit of feedback from them about what a time schedule would look like. But I found myself becoming more and more transparently attached to, oh, it's going to be at the holidays, it's going to be at the beginning of the year, this is going to be a really good thing, a really good platform, and we'll be able to move forward, right? And again, I was kind of grounding myself based upon that timeline, which is not necessarily unreasonable, but I was getting into that loop that I was, based upon the signals that I was seeing and that type of thing, that I was starting to become attached to that, right? And then keep in mind is that our brains are pattern matching machines. So they are going to take this information, come up with, I don't want to say a predictive model, but that this is going to happen now, or at this time, I need to be ready for it, right? And this is where it started getting me as time started passing. We're almost into March at this point, and no end in sight for that. Is I really had, and I felt myself becoming increasingly frustrated. Like, why is this not happening? Right? Clearly, they understand it the way I understand, right? Almost projecting, and that's kind of the pitfall I've fallen in over the years. And Doug and Derek, you both experienced this in our working life, where I assume that people see things exactly the way that I see them, and that things should happen. I don't know why you're both shaking your head so violently there, but it's things that should happen the way that they should happen. But I had to reset and recognize, hey, I'm having the thought that this outcome is taking longer than it should. Okay, so recognizing that it happened, and then letting it come in. All right, Patrick, this is an outcome that you have manifested or put into your own psyche. You can't control what this other organization is going to do, right? They're taking the time on their time schedule, and you can't control that. And once I started rebaselining, okay, this is right. I'd fallen in, and it'd been a while since I'd fallen into that trap on such a large scale before. But this one was just so important to me. And the fact that I was able to recognize it, accept it, process it, let it be with it, right? Yeah, you've set an expectation. You're having the thought that this should happen. All right, okay. And then kind of diffusing myself from it. I've done what I can done. I've taken action aligned to my core values, which is what I've talked about before. Recognition, accepting, go in accordance with core values, and allow reality to unfold. And this has just been over the last couple of days that I've just really focused down on this, because I was just in a frustrated mood last week, and I'm in a much better state of mind. So anyway, that was a long-winded, rambling example, but I'm sure you guys got good examples of this as well. So Garrett.
Yeah, what I really appreciate about your sharing there is like you were able to retrain your mind and in the moment of your sharing of like feeling frustrated and you wanted an outcome to happen and you wanted the people to see it the way you wanted to see it, you were able to like take a step back because of your growth and maturity in the things we practice and be able to retrain your mind to see it differently. to me, that's where the power resides in your sharing. And I have the same perspective with career right now. Like, where am I heading in the second half of my career here as a mid-age, and what's that look like? And I get so attached to these expectations and outcomes that I should be here or should be there or over here doing this, and I'm not, and I get bored or frustrated or disconnected. I've had to really take a step back the last really 2 months and like really go internal and be like, what if I just like surrendered this like within myself and just stop having expectations and outcomes around where I should be in my career or where I should be heading, just let it go and then just like in that space fill it with like positively looking at, vision board and where it is I want to see myself going and what opportunity I see opening up for me that's going to take me to fulfill my purpose and values. And, the universe, as we know it, often responds with something showing up in the time it needs to show up. And so that's what I've tried to practice in these instances is losing expectations and outcomes and what I think it should be, and just, going in that space of letting it go, surrender with her, so that you can experience, outside of that, like what needs to come into your life.
I think Derek's dog has a outcome in mind right now.
Yeah, he just
Expectations.
told me. He told me where I'm going.
Yeah. Really good examples there, Derek. Doug, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, what if my dog barks while I'm talking? I know, you guys know me fairly well, and you probably have like remarked to other people or said, that one thing about Doug is he's just full of energy. Like he's so energetic. And, and no, an interesting corollary to this topic is how much like what if kind of things and really robs you of energy. You have so much energy in a day, and if you spend a lot of your energy like worrying about things that could go wrong and not really, it just robs you of a bunch of energy, and like it takes your mind space. You're just wasting a lot of things when you worry about it. So, like trying to figure out ways to catch yourself worrying and reframe things, as we're kind of talking about, is important. I'm remembering a work experience. Again, I think we often talk about doing presentations or presenting because a lot of our work is about getting our thoughts together. And then, when we present, we're trying to convince departments or people that we need to go invest in people and time into doing these things. So it is a pretty big deal. And, again, you can spend a lot of times worrying. I can remember having a conversation with my leader at the time, and, I was walking through what I planned to present, and, he was being very supportive and very positive, but I was like, well, what if somebody asked this? And he's like, okay, what if somebody asked that? How are you going to respond? And I was like, well, what if they do this? And basically I just kept what ifing very negatively about somebody's going to ask this, or this person that we all knew that could be kind of a jerk is going to do this, and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, he just sort of stopped and was like, why do you spend all your time worrying about what might happen? And I was like, well, because I'm preparing. It's this fallacy of preparation. Like I'm preparing for every worst case scenario that can occur. And he looked at me and goes, I guess that's one way you could go about it. And then, and like that truly happened. And like, I've never forgotten it, because it was like, oh yeah, I could spend all my time and all my worries trying to figure that out, or I could just prepare as best I can and go. And, the other part to this is when you get into that situation, trying to reframe it in the context of, okay, let's say that does happen. Even if that does happen, I've responded to their questions in the past. Even if that does happen, I've figured out how I'm going to deal with it, in there. So it's like, it's more flipping it to, instead of like trying to prepare for everything that might go wrong or everything that might happen, recognize that I've been through those presentations in the past and I've survived the presentation, and there was no really truly negative outcome. I was able to respond to questions, able to deal with difficult people and all those kind of things. So, again, the what if is a big energy drain. Trying to prepare for every way something can go wrong is a big challenge and a real waste of your time. And then really focus on resiliency around no matter what happens, I'm going to be able to handle it because I have handled it before.
Yeah, that's a really, really good example. And I probably know who was giving you that advice, but I won't say it on the podcast here. And I'm gonna double click again because I am um, still, as I've kind of come out of this funk that I've described earlier, is one of the things I realized I hadn't been doing lately that I think may have contributed to this. So at my desk, my other desk, I've got in a drawer a piece of paper, and it's kind of just a compilation of, things that uh, I don't want to say they're motivational, but things to frame your day up, right? And one of those is, can I accept anything that happens today as it relates to the workday, right? On if you got a really, you know, meeting that you think is going to be aggressive or controversial or whatever, antagonistic, or if you got something weird that you know is going to tough conversations you got to have with somebody, and kind of um, just kind of centering on that, right? And I read something earlier this morning as well. It was a CEO, I don't remember who it was, of what company, but she was saying that when she gets stressed, one of the things she asks herself, is this life threatening? Because again, as humans, we are programmed to react this way. And so one of the things that, like, can I accept this? Is this life threatening? Similar concept. So one of the things I've historically done in the morning is making sure that, am I setting myself up for an attachment or an outcome, right? Have I banked on one that I shouldn't be, right? So am I assuming that something's going to happen today? Or am I expecting this outcome is going to happen today? Because again, I can't control the outcomes. I can only do that which I'm aligned with my values and go forward. So one of the things, if I find myself in a position where, hey, dude, you're expecting this to happen on this call, or you're expecting this outcome. You can't control it. You've done the work that you need to do. You're going to make the argument, but somebody else maybe making the decision, and accepting in advance, right? I don't control it, right? And if they make that decision, I've done what I've needed to do, and the decision is made, and then it's time to just keep moving along with your aligned values, right? So doing that little bit of a morning audit of what expectations have I inadvertently set up, because I don't think we do it intentionally. It's just part of the human condition. And then going that thing. I have the expectation that, let's accept that, work through that, and realize I don't control the outcome. And what I found out, or the way that works, a lot of times the outcomes come true, and that's good. But even if the outcome is not the way that you had hoped, it's one of which, I presented what I needed to present in the meeting. They had a perspective. They made a decision. We're good. And that's the end of it. It's not, darn it, they didn't see my point of view, or they should have agreed with me, or I don't know why this person had to say this negative comment, or whatever the case may be. And not only in the business world, but like, I think we all have expectations of our spouse and our children, and learning that, again, you don't control their outcomes. You've got to focus on what you can control has been super for me. Like, again, you guys probably both realize I have this historically been a bad, habit of assuming people could read my mind. So, I'm coming back from a long business trip when I have dinner with a wife. Surely she knows this, right? I haven't said it, but surely, the outcome is clear, right? That you should have a nice dinner and take a walk or whatever, not realizing that she's, had a bad day or had been watching the grandchild or whatever. And now, once I've, been able to accept that, hey, you don't control the outcome. Matter of fact, you didn't even tell her, so you shouldn't even have an outcome expected, but just in that kind of way. Sorry for that rambling couple of things there, but this topic has really been beneficial for me to in addition to the recognize, accept, and go, is to keep my head straight. So anyway, Doug, more thoughts?
Yeah. There's a quote from Corey Ten Boom. Do y'all know who that is? Y'all seem to
I
know
think
who
he's
people are.
related to Anonymous, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's Anonymous's sister-in-law. Yeah. But now the quote is, "Worrying does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow; it empties today of its strength." Like a common thread in the couple comments I made, like starting around, like I had these huge expectations of how great an experience would be, and then I found myself in the experience, like looking at my son, like, why aren't they enjoying this? Why don't they visibly show that this is the greatest thing they've ever experienced? But, I'm spending when I should be in the moment enjoying the experience, I'm wasting my experience worrying about, like, why aren't they enjoying it and those kind of things. And then when we get into these what if spirals and we're trying to anticipate everything that could go wrong, I'm wasting the now, I'm wasting the present trying to worry about things that are going to go wrong. And again, you only have so much energy in your day. You only have so much to give. You only have so much time on earth. Wasting it trying to expect experiences to always be great, or wasting it trying with these great expectations, or wasting it with all this worrying is just, it's a bad use of time. So, again, if whatever you can do to recognize it's occurring, accept like, hey, I need to get more out of the moment. And, you hit on a very great point there about like you hit several good points. One is like you can't hold someone to an expectation if you haven't set that expectation with them. That's one I use at work all the time. Like, we can't expect that these people are going to know this if we haven't told them what they need to know and what we expect them to do. But the other one is like the separate realities thing is like, I don't know what's going on in my son's life. I don't know, like, I know what's going on in his life, but I don't know, like, he may have had a bad day. He may have had a fight with a friend or whatever. Like, I don't know. And I can't hold my expectations on top of them. So it's really just sort of being in the moment, enjoying your moment, and understanding people are having their own moments and all those kind of things. So anyways, also, I think we can call this the rambling podcast, but I think that's really important, is make sure you're enjoying the present and not wasting it worrying about what the future should be or could be and all those kind of things. And I'm just going to close out my comment with a quote, or with a typical thing is, be kind to yourself. Okay.
Well done. Derek.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I think that one of the things I've learned on the journey is to, you know, get a hold of your thoughts, and, behind those thoughts often are what you expect should happen, or expecting that outcome. And why not just sit back and observe for a while, and take an observer mindset, take an observer approach to what it is that you see in your work or in your personal relationships, or just observe for a while. And instead of like trying to, have those definition of what you expect or a particular outcome, why don't you just observe for a while what it is that's going on in the various dynamics of your life, and see what opens up? Because one thing's for sure is, and I think Dyer hits on this, is when you start observing your life, you're able to allow the source to take you where you need to go. And I think that's very powerful, because we often live in this spiral and this mindset of drive, and we got to be here, and we got to do this, we got to accomplish that, which is all great things. It's nice to have goals and accomplish things. But often, once it starts becoming detrimental to your well-being, and you're not able to step back and be present, and just observe what all's going on around you, and celebrate the great things that are around you, often we overlook that. I think that will keep us from really enjoying and having true peace in life.
Yeah, no, very well said. Very well said. And I think just to kind of tie it together, is one of the things that I've learned over time is that even, I'm well past 50 at this point, but even achieving that and achieving certain things in your career and your family doesn't inoculate you from disappointment, right? In the sense that regardless of how good as it may be, right, there are going to be things that you hadn't planned for or didn't turn out the way that you wanted them to. You got to accept it, right? You got to accept that, right? You can't fight against it. All right. And so I think this is going to be a wrap here. I will just part by saying, be curious, not judgmental. And we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye, everyone.